When I look back, there wasn't one big explosion that shattered everything. It was thousands of tiny cracks, silent, unnoticed, until the day everything collapsed at once. I was sitting in my car outside a cafe on a rainy Thursday afternoon when I first saw her. Not just Jessica. Jessica with him. They weren't doing anything outrageous, just sitting together in a booth by the window, her laughing at something he said, his hand casually resting way too close to hers. She leaned into him in a way I'd never seen her lean into me, not even back when we were young and stupid and thought love could survive anything. It was the kind of laugh you can't fake. The kind of laugh that doesn't belong to a woman who comes home every night telling you she's exhausted, overworked, drained of anything except polite conversation and distracted kisses. I didn't burst into the cafe. I didn't even get out of the car. I sat there, the rain tapping on the windshield like a clock counting down the last seconds of the life I thought we had. I watched them for almost an hour. The way she smiled, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear like a shy teenager, the way he leaned in and said things that made her tilt her head back and laugh like no one in the world mattered but the two of them. I didn't need to see them touch. It was already obvious. There are things people do when they're falling for each other that no amount of distance can hide. I didn't go home right away. I drove nowhere in particular, just needed the motion to keep from unraveling right there behind the wheel. I ended up at the edge of town in some empty parking lot behind a closed-down strip mall and sat there with the engine running until it got dark. By the time I got home, Jessica was already there. She was in the kitchen, cooking, humming some tune under her breath like she hadn't just spent her afternoon being someone else's woman. She turned and gave me the same tired smile she'd been giving me for months. I almost laughed. Almost asked her how she managed to slip back into character so fast. Instead, I played it cool. Sat down at the counter. Watched her move around the kitchen. The lies oozed out of her like syrup, where she'd been, client meeting, why she hadn't answered my texts, bad reception, why she was in such a good mood, a productive day at work. She even made a joke about how she must be finally turning her luck around. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to ask any questions. Not yet. I wasn't going to confront her with half-formed accusations and get gaslit into thinking I was crazy. No, I was going to be patient. I was going to collect every shred of truth until there was no corner she could lie her way into. The next day, I called out sick from work and spent hours digging. I found an old iPad we hadn't used in years still logged into her email. Hidden under a bunch of boring spam was a hotel reservation from 2 weeks ago under her maiden name. I found Uber receipts, a separate Venmo account she thought I didn't know about, payments labeled with emojis I couldn't even bring myself to decipher. But the worst was yet to come. Buried in her cloud storage was a folder titled Work Projects. Inside, mixed between files for event setups and venue contracts, were screenshots of messages. Private chats. Him sending her playlists. Her sending him selfies, nothing explicit but intimate enough to turn my stomach. Him writing poems about her eyes. Her telling him that he made her feel alive again. It wasn't some stupid fling. It wasn't some drunken mistake. Jessica wasn't slipping. She was sprinting away from me with everything she had. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to be the man who begged his wife to remember who she used to love. I was going to wait for the perfect moment. Because after 20 years I asked my wife a single, chilling question and she had no clue I already knew everything. And I was going to pick my moment carefully. Very carefully. The next 3 days were a war inside my own house. She didn't know I knew. And I wasn't about to show my cards too soon. Jessica went about her life like nothing was wrong, like her biggest concern was picking out new curtains or deciding what to order for dinner. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings, half-heartedly, not even pretending to mean it. She sat across from me at the table at night, her phone always just barely within reach, flashing occasional notifications she tried to hide under casual conversation. I started playing along, matching her energy. I smiled when she smiled. I asked about her day. I told her I missed her, watched her flinch ever so slightly every time the words came out of my mouth. It was like watching someone slowly suffocate in their own lies. Meanwhile, I built my case. Every time she left the house, I followed her location through a tracking app she had forgotten was still connected to our shared family account. Every time she claimed to be meeting a client, I took screenshots of her pings at coffee shops and boutique hotels, never anywhere near an event venue. By the 4th night, I had enough to bury her. But I wasn't interested in a private confrontation anymore. I wanted her to show me who she really was without any masks left. So I set a little trap. Thursday afternoon, I told Jessica I had to fly out for a last-minute work emergency. It wasn't true. I packed a fake bag, booked a fake ticket, even let her watch me call a fake coworker to confirm it. I played it cool, kissed her forehead, thanked her for being so understanding about my schedule, and walked out the door. Then I circled the block and parked 2 streets over. I waited. Less than an hour later, a black sedan pulled into our driveway. I didn't recognize the car, but I sure as hell recognized the man who got out, the same guy from the cafe. Medium build, cocky smile, carrying a bottle of wine like he was stepping into his second home. I stayed hidden, heart slamming in my chest so hard it hurt. I watched Jessica open the door wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years, the one she used to call her special occasion dress. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. Lit up in a way I hadn't seen directed at me since before smartphones were a thing. They barely made it inside before they were wrapped up in each other, laughing and stumbling over the threshold like 2 teenagers sneaking out after curfew. I didn't wait. I marched straight to the front door. No knocking. No hesitation. I opened the door and stepped inside. Jessica froze first. The guy turned around, confused, bottle of wine still dangling stupidly from his hand. She went pale. Not guilty pale, caught pale. For a full 5 seconds, nobody said anything. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. You could hear my heart break and rage all at once. Then she found her voice, sharp, high-pitched, the kind you hear from someone who knows the lies aren't going to save her this time. Daniel? You said you were gone. You're not supposed to be here. That was her first instinct. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Just panic that I had ruined her night. I stared at her, then at him, then back at her. I spoke so quietly the words practically shook in the air. Who is he, Jessica? She didn't answer. She just stood there, breathing hard, looking at me like I was the intruder. The guy had the audacity to step forward, trying to play it cool. Look, man, maybe we can talk about this. I cut him off with a look so cold he shut up mid-sentence. I turned my eyes back to her. How long? Jessica crossed her arms like she was the one being wronged here. Her lip curled in that ugly little sneer she only ever used when she thought she had the upper hand. You haven't made me feel alive in years, Daniel, she snapped. You think just because you show up, suddenly you're owed something? I laughed. A hollow, disbelieving laugh. She didn't even try to deny it. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't heartbroken. She was furious at being caught. I pulled my phone from my pocket and showed her the screenshots. The messages. The hotel bookings. The Venmo transfers. Everything. Her face twisted in rage. You've been spying on me? Invading my privacy? She said it like I was the criminal. Like her months of betrayal were some minor footnote compared to the real sin, me daring to find out the truth. You destroyed this marriage the second you decided to crawl into bed with him, I said. Don't you dare pretend this is on me. The other guy started edging toward the door, sensing there was nothing here worth fighting for. Jessica didn't even notice. She was too busy pouring gasoline on the fire. You were boring, Daniel, she spat. You were a paycheck. A roommate. You stopped being a man years ago. Every word felt like another cut across my skin. Not because it was true. Because I realized she had probably been rehearsing that speech for months, waiting for the day she could throw it in my face and walk away without guilt. But she miscalculated. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to ask her to stay. I just stood there watching the pathetic woman she had become, wondering how I had ever loved her so blindly. And then I said the one thing she didn't expect. You can have each other, I said quietly. You're perfect for one another. Rotten to the core. And with that I turned around and left. No shouting. No final scene. Just the sound of her voice calling after me, not in love, not in regret, but in pure anger that she hadn't gotten to control the ending. But this was just the beginning. Because I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. When I stepped outside, the cold night air slapped me in the face. But it wasn't enough to clear the chaos running wild in my chest. I didn't drive away immediately. I walked to the corner of the block, stood there with my hands in my pockets, and tried to feel something other than pure disgust. I thought she would run after me. Part of me expected it. The guilty apology, the panic scrambling to fix what she'd broken. But no, nothing. She didn't come after me. Not one damn step. That's when it clicked. Jessica hadn't been afraid of losing me. She had been afraid of being exposed. Afraid that I would make her look like the villain she was. Because deep down, the only thing she had left was her image. The devoted wife, the hard-working woman, the sweet, responsible Jessica everyone believed they knew. I got into my truck and sat there, staring at the steering wheel, feeling the weight of 20 years crushing my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger anymore. Just this vast, hollow disgust. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. It didn't say, "I'm sorry." It didn't say, "Come home." It said, "We need to talk. Come back before you do something stupid." That was it. No love. No regret. Just control. She still thought she could handle me like she handled everything else. A problem to be managed. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove across town to my brother Mark's place. Mark had always hated Jessica, even when he kept his mouth shut out of respect for me. I knew he'd understand. When I walked through his door, Mark took one look at my face and didn't say a word. He just handed me a beer and sat down across from me, waiting. I told him everything, the cafe, the hotel bookings, the confrontation, every vile detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Man, she's not even sorry," he said. "She's gonna flip this on you. You know that, right?" I nodded. I knew. Jessica didn't accept losses. She didn't apologize. She rebranded the truth until it looked like she was the victim. And then, right as Mark was about to open his mouth again, my phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica. This time it read, "Since you're abandoning your family, don't bother coming back. I'm changing the locks. Changing the locks. In our house. The house my hands had built from the ground up. The house where every floorboard, every coat of paint, every light fixture had a story tied to my life. She was trying to erase me from my own story." Mark saw the look on my face and leaned forward. "Don't go back there alone," he said. "She's setting you up for something. I guarantee it." I knew he was right. Jessica had already shown me she wasn't just a cheater. She was vindictive. She would burn everything down before admitting she was wrong. So I didn't go back. I called a lawyer instead. At 9 o'clock at night. And by midnight we had papers drafted. Separation. Demand for exclusive use of the property pending divorce. And just for good measure, I sent Jessica one final message before I turned my phone off. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Make sure you check your mail, since you're so good at hiding things there." I didn't wait for a response, but it still came. Fast, furious, as if she'd been sitting there refreshing the screen. "You won't take everything from me, you pathetic little man." I laughed when I read it. A real sharp laugh this time, because she had no idea what was coming next. Jessica thought betrayal would be the end of my story. She didn't realize it was just the first page of hers crashing down. And in a few days, when everything she built on her little lies started crumbling around her, she would know exactly what it felt like to lose something real. Because for once, I was going to be the one writing the ending. 2 days later, the real war began. I thought Jessica would retreat, lick her wounds, maybe even pretend to be civil for appearance's sake. I underestimated her. Badly. She didn't come at me with reason or regret. She came at me with nuclear rage. It started with the bank. On Saturday morning, I went to buy a coffee and my card got declined. Confused, I checked my account. Empty. Completely drained. She had taken everything overnight. Savings, checking, even the emergency fund we kept just in case. She must have stayed up all night moving money, wiring it through dummy accounts, maybe even getting that idiot she cheated with to help her. And the locks? Yeah, she wasn't bluffing. She had really changed them, and just for good measure, she left a bright pink sticky note on the front door. "Get a lawyer, Daniel. You're not welcome here." I stood there staring at that stupid note, feeling something inside me boil in a way I had never felt before. Not sadness, not fear, just a clean, cutting fury. She thought she could erase me from the life we built because she got bored and found someone new to keep her entertained. Mark pulled up 20 minutes later. He didn't even ask, just yanked the note off the door, crumpled it into a ball, and said, "You ready to burn her world down?" I nodded once. It was time to stop playing defense. The first thing we did was go straight to the lawyer's office. Emergency injunctions, court orders, paperwork that would freeze any remaining accounts, block her from selling the house, and put every asset under scrutiny. Jessica wasn't smart enough to hide everything fast. And the law wasn't going to smile kindly on a woman who emptied marital funds the second her husband caught her cheating. As I sat there signing paperwork, my phone started blowing up again. Texts from people we knew. Mutual friends. Her family. Jessica had wasted no time launching her version of the story that I had abandoned her without warning, that I had emotionally neglected her for years, that she had no choice but to find happiness elsewhere. A few even dared to message me things like, "You have to understand, marriages are complicated. Maybe you should take some responsibility too." I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. I wanted Jessica to feel safe in her lies. I wanted her to think she was winning. That night, Mark and I stayed up late at his kitchen table, piecing everything together. Every receipt, every hotel charge, every screenshot. We built a timeline so tight it could strangle her. And just when I thought I was ready for whatever came next, another betrayal hit me out of nowhere, this time from someone I had trusted even more than Jessica. Her best friend, Claire. Claire, who had been like a sister to me, who had been at our wedding, at our kids' birthdays, at every major moment of our lives. Claire, who always told me she hated cheaters more than anything. Turns out Claire knew. She had known for months. And not just known, she had helped cover for Jessica. Lied to me when Jessica needed alibis. Sent fake work emails from dummy accounts to make it look like Jessica was where she said she was. I found out when I pulled up old messages Jessica had backed up to the cloud and forgotten to delete. Claire practically cheered her on. "You deserve better, Jess. Daniel's just holding you back. Don't let guilt stop you from living your life. He won't even see it coming." Every sentence was like another dagger to the gut. I realized I had been surrounded by snakes for longer than I could even guess. Mark saw the color drain from my face as I read the messages. "Tell me we're going scorched earth now," he said. I nodded without hesitation. It was no longer about heartbreak. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about truth. Dragging every last filthy secret into the light where Jessica couldn't spin them into pretty little lies anymore. And so I made a decision. A big one. If Jessica wanted to destroy everything we built, I was going to make sure she had nothing left to rebuild with. No house. No money. No reputation. And it started with the one thing she never thought I would dare touch. Her public image. Because Jessica wasn't just a private liar. She was a very public figure in our community. Charity boards. Event planning. Public role model speeches about integrity and family values. And soon all of it would burn. I didn't have to wait long for the perfect opportunity. Jessica had been planning a charity gala for months, one of those over-the-top events where everyone dresses up, pretends they're saints, and writes fat checks just to see their names printed in gold on a brochure. She had been bragging about it to anyone who would listen. In her mind, this gala was going to be her crowning moment, her big comeback after what she called a hard year. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could cheat, lie, steal, and still have the whole town clapping for her like trained seals. I was about to show her just how wrong she was. Mark and I worked fast. He had a buddy in IT who owed him a favor. It didn't take much convincing to get a little presentation inserted into the slideshow Jessica had prepared for the gala. Right between the photos of happy families and donation numbers, something special would appear, a beautiful, damning collage of screenshots, dates, times, hotel receipts, and just for good measure, a few choice quotes from Jessica's private messages to her little side project. No nudity. No slander. Just cold, hard, undeniable truth. Professional. Precise. Nuclear. The night of the gala, I dressed in a clean suit and showed up 10 minutes early. I stood at the back of the ballroom, unnoticed among the crowd, just another smiling face sipping a drink, waiting for the show. Jessica floated through the room like royalty. She wore a sleek red dress, her makeup flawless, her laugh loud and easy. She posed for pictures with local politicians, business owners, even a priest who blessed the event. Every time a camera flash went off, she smiled wider, soaked in the admiration like it was oxygen. And then the lights dimmed. The screens flickered on. The slideshow began. At first, it was all safe material. Pictures of charity events, community service projects, kids' sports teams Jessica had sponsored. I saw her relax, saw that smug little smile settle back onto her face. She had no idea the bomb was seconds away from dropping. The transition happened clean, smooth, almost elegant. 1 second it was a picture of Jessica cutting a ribbon at a shelter opening. The next, it was a screenshot of her texting. "Every time he kisses me, I have to pretend I'm not thinking about you." Whispers broke out instantly. Heads turned. People leaned forward in their seats, confused. Then the next slide appeared. A hotel booking under her maiden name. A Venmo transaction with a lipstick kiss emoji. Another text. "He's just a wallet. You're my real life." The room went silent except for the rustle of programs hitting the floor as people dropped them. Jessica froze mid-step across the stage. She looked up and saw her entire secret life flashing in front of hundreds of witnesses. She tried to speak. I could see it, her mouth opening, a hand half lifting like she could physically push the truth back into the screen. But no words came out. The slides kept rolling. Date after date, proof after proof, lie after lie. By the time the screens finally blacked out, the room had transformed. No more smiles. No more polite applause. Just a thick, ugly silence, heavy enough to crush anyone standing under it. Jessica stood there, trembling, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. She opened her mouth again, tried to stammer something about a private matter and misunderstandings, but the words were paper-thin against the weight of what everyone had just seen. I didn't wait for the fallout to start. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there in the wreckage she built with her own hands. Outside, the night was sharp and clear. Mark was waiting by my truck, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Tell me you saw her face," he said. "I saw everything I needed to," I answered. Inside the ballroom, chaos had erupted. I didn't have to see it to know how fast the whispers were spreading, how quickly the people Jessica had tried so hard to impress were turning their backs on her. No charity wanted a scandal. No politician wanted a photo with a liar. No business wanted their name tied to a fraud. Jessica wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything she thought made her powerful. But even then, I knew she wouldn't go down easy. Jessica wasn't the kind of woman who folded her cards and walked away. She was the kind who flipped the entire table over. And sure enough, when I checked my phone later that night, there was a message waiting for me. Short, vicious. "You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming next." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Because whatever Jessica was planning, it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't playing defense. I was already 3 moves ahead. I didn't have to wait long to see what Jessica had meant. 2 days after the gala, I got served. She had filed for an emergency hearing, claiming she was afraid for her safety, accusing me of harassment, mental cruelty, financial manipulation, you name it, she threw it in there. A grotesque collection of lies stitched together just tight enough to make a court take it seriously. It wasn't about winning. It was about punishing me, dragging me through the mud publicly after she had been exposed, making sure if she had to go down, she could at least claw some skin off on the way. The hearing was scheduled fast. That's how these things go, accusations fly and the system reacts before facts even catch up. Mark and I sat down with my lawyer, went through every charge. Some of them were so ridiculous, we actually laughed. The idea that I, the guy who hadn't raised his voice once during our entire marriage, was suddenly some terrifying threat. But there's no joke in a courtroom. No laughter when the system starts grinding its gears. The day of the hearing, I sat in that stiff, fluorescent-lit courtroom and watched Jessica walk in like she was the one who had been wronged. She wore a demure black dress, barely any makeup, hair tied back like she was trying to cosplay innocence itself. Her new boyfriend wasn't there. Of course not. Wouldn't fit the victim narrative. She had even dragged Clare in, sitting 2 rows behind her, pretending to be a concerned friend instead of the backstabbing liar she was. Jessica got up and told the court how I had abandoned her, emotionally terrorized her, stalked her after our separation. She wiped fake tears from the corners of her eyes, playing the part like she had been rehearsing it in the mirror for weeks. Every word was a dagger aimed straight at my credibility, my dignity. But the difference between Jessica and me? I had receipts. Literal ones. When my lawyer stood up, he didn't just defend me. He obliterated her. First, he produced evidence showing Jessica had drained our accounts before any supposed harassment started. Then he dropped the screenshots, the ones showing Jessica bragging about how she was going to bleed him dry in group chats with Claire and others. The coup de grace was the GPS tracking. Records showing Jessica had shown up at my workplace twice after I filed for separation. Showed up at my brother's house and sat outside in her car for almost an hour. She wasn't the scared one. She was the predator. By the time my lawyer finished, the judge's face had gone from polite neutrality to thinly veiled disgust, not at me, but at her. Jessica's lawyer tried to do damage control, stammering something about misunderstandings and emotions running high during separations, but it was over. Request for emergency protection? Denied. Flat. Cold. And then came the part Jessica hadn't planned for. The judge, probably seeing the circus for what it was, ordered a temporary freeze on her assets too, pending full investigation of the financial misconduct. In the space of an hour, Jessica went from swinging the sword to getting shackled by it. She looked at me across the courtroom, and for the first time I saw the cracks really split open. Not anger. Not smugness. Panic. Because for the first time in our entire twisted downfall, Jessica wasn't in control. She wasn't even on defense. She was losing. Hard. After the hearing, Claire actually had the audacity to approach me in the hallway, fake concern dripping from every word. You're really hurting her, Daniel. She's not strong like you think. I didn't even blink. I leaned in close enough that only she could hear. Tell her, I said, voice low and steady. This was the polite version. She keeps pushing, she's going to find out what the ugly version looks like. Claire's face paled under her cheap makeup. I walked away without waiting for a reply. That night, Mark and I sat on his porch drinking beer and watching the sun go down, both of us quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, you know she's going to make another move, right? I nodded. Jessica wouldn't stop. Not until she was left with absolutely nothing to weaponize. And deep down, I realized something that chilled me more than anything she had already done. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted destruction. She wanted me to hurt so badly I'd regret ever uncovering the truth in the first place. And something told me she had just started aiming at a new target. Someone a lot closer to me than I expected. Jessica's next move came faster than I thought. And it hit harder than I was ready for. It started small, almost invisible, whispers. Little rumors floating around town, muttered behind fake smiles, buried in polite conversations. According to the news story Jessica was spinning, I hadn't just emotionally abandoned her, I had been the one cheating first. She told anyone who would listen that I had a string of side pieces while she suffered alone at home, trying to hold the family together. It was such a bold, disgusting lie that for a minute I actually underestimated it. Who would believe it? Me, the guy who spent 20 years breaking my back for that family while she played her little bored housewife games? But people are stupid. People want gossip. People love a scandal that flips the script. And worst of all, some of those people were supposed to be mine. The first Real hit came from Ryan, an old friend, someone who had been there before Jessica and I even started dating. I ran into him at a gas station one evening. Thought nothing of it. Waved, asked how he was doing. He barely looked at me. Kept his voice flat, cold. Heard you're not the saint you make yourself out to be, man. I blinked, thrown off balance. What the hell are you talking about? Ryan just shook his head and got back in his car, engine roaring as he peeled out of the parking lot. I stood there for a long minute, heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with that creeping, horrible feeling of isolation. Jessica hadn't just poisoned the marriage. She was poisoning the entire life I had built around it. I tried to brush it off. Told myself Real friends wouldn't turn their backs over rumors. But 2 days later, another knife landed, this time right in my chest. My own mother called me. Her voice was trembling with that careful, terrified politeness you use when you think someone you love has turned into a stranger. Daniel, she said. Jessica came by. She told me things. Things about how you treated her. About other women. Other women. I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it, the absurdity of it, the sheer insanity that my own mother could even hesitate for a second to believe it. Mom, I said. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't even look at another woman. Everything she's saying is a lie because she got caught. There was a pause on the line. A long, awful pause. I want to believe you, she said quietly. I want to believe you. Not I do believe you. That was the moment I realized Jessica's plan wasn't to win in court. It wasn't even to win at all. It was to burn my name so thoroughly that even if I escaped the marriage, I'd be walking through the rest of my life dragging ashes behind me. And she wasn't doing it alone. Claire was feeding her ammunition. Ryan was feeding the rumors. Even people I barely knew had taken up the chorus, nodding, whispering, connecting dots that didn't exist just because it made a better story than the boring truth. And the final blow that night? Jessica posted a long, crocodile tear-filled letter on her public charity page, the same one where all the gala donors followed her. A letter about healing after betrayal. About finding strength after being discarded. About forgiving the unforgivable. She didn't mention my name once. She didn't have to. Everyone knew exactly who the villain was supposed to be. The comments section exploded, sympathy, offers of support, fake friends lining up to tell her how brave she was, how strong. I sat there in the dark, scrolling through it, feeling that old, familiar rage start to simmer again. Jessica didn't want my apology. She didn't want my money. She didn't even want my regret. She wanted my destruction. And if I didn't move fast, she was going to get it. Mark found me that night, sitting on the back porch staring out into the yard like it could give me answers. You're losing the court of public opinion, he said bluntly, cracking open a beer. You gonna keep taking punches? Or you gonna punch back? I didn't answer him right away. Because part of me, the part that still stupidly hoped some of these people might eventually see the truth, wanted to believe I could ride it out. But another part, the one that had been quietly growing stronger with every betrayal, every knife in the back, every ruined relationship, knew better. Jessica wasn't going to stop until I was crawling. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Not now. Not ever. I turned to Mark, voice steady. I'm done playing defense. He smiled that slow, dangerous smile. Good, he said. Because I've been waiting for you to say that. And with that we started planning the next move. Because if Jessica wanted a war, she was about to find out what a real one looked like. And this time it would be her face in the dirt. We didn't wait. By the next morning, Mark and I had a strategy locked down. No more quiet dignity. No more letting her smear me uncontested. If Jessica wanted to weaponize public opinion, fine, but she forgot that once you start a war in the open, you don't get to control where the bullets land. First, we started feeding real information anonymously. Screenshots of her actual texts to her affair partner. Proof of her financial fraud, the drained accounts, the falsified expense reports from her charity projects. Nothing doctored. Nothing exaggerated. Just raw, sickening truth. Mark's friend worked some magic and made sure it ended up exactly where it needed to. Local news tip lines. Anonymous community Facebook groups. Gossip forums where people tore reputations apart faster than wildfire. Within 24 hours, Jessica's shiny little empire started to catch fire. The first blow came when her charity board suspended her pending investigation into misuse of funds. Funny thing about people who donate money to causes, they don't like finding out their saintly event planner was siphoning off cash for hotel stays with her boyfriend. The second hit came even harder. A business she had been working with for years, one she always bragged about like it was her personal kingdom, publicly announced they were severing ties with her to protect the integrity of our brand. And the comments section? It flipped on her like a pack of starving wolves. Always knew something was off about her. Typical fake do-gooder. Wonder how many other lies she told. Jessica tried to fight it. Posted long-winded statements about fake news and online harassment. Tried to pivot into playing the victim even harder. But the tide had turned. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't the one drowning. She was. I thought that would be enough for a while. But then, the twist I didn't see coming hit, and it wasn't from my side. It was from hers. Clare, loyal, sniveling Clare, turned. I didn't find out because Clare suddenly grew a conscience. I found out because she called me. Her number popped up late one night when Mark and I were wrapping up paperwork for the divorce filings. I almost didn't answer. Almost sent it straight to voicemail. But something told me to pick up. Daniel, she said, her voice low and urgent. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how bad it was, Clare blurted. I mean, yeah, I covered for her. I thought she just needed space. I thought you two would work it out. But she's crazy. She's spiraling. Still, I stayed silent. Let her talk. I have proof, Clare said quickly, sensing she was losing me. Stuff she said. Stuff she planned. Now she had my attention. What kind of stuff? I asked carefully. Clare hesitated. She's been trying to plant evidence, Daniel. Fake emails, fake texts. She wanted to make it look like you were threatening her. So she could get full control of everything. House, money, even tried to figure out how to screw you on custody if you fought her. I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt. Of course Jessica wasn't just content ruining my name in town. She wanted to bury me so deep I'd never climb out. Clare offered to meet and hand over everything. Emails, recordings, screenshots. Mark thought it was a setup. But something in Clare's voice told me otherwise, not guilt, not fear, a pure survival instinct. Jessica's world was burning and Clare didn't want to go down with her. We met the next day in a grimy little diner off the highway where nobody knew our names and nobody cared why two exhausted people were exchanging a battered thumb drive across a sticky table. Clare handed it over without meeting my eyes. You didn't deserve this, she mumbled. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I just walked out, thumb drive burning in my palm, feeling the weight of 100 new weapons I hadn't even known I was holding. Later that night, as I sat in Mark's living room going through the files, the full scale of Jessica's madness hit me. Emails she drafted addressed to herself from fake accounts. Screenshots of conversations that never happened. Timelines so carefully falsified it sent chills up my spine. And the worst? Recordings of her and Clare discussing how best to push Daniel until he snaps. Push me. Deliberately. So she could turn my anger into her ticket to walk away with everything. And still, even knowing all of that, a cold, brutal calm settled over me. Jessica thought she could manufacture my downfall. Now, I was holding her real one in my hands. Mark leaned over, looking at the screen. You ready to finish this? He asked. I smiled. Not out of happiness. Out of pure, final clarity. I'm ready to end it. Because I wasn't just going to win. I was going to leave nothing left for her to rebuild. The court date was set for early morning, 2 weeks after Clare handed me the thumb drive. 2 weeks of watching Jessica try to spin her world faster and faster as it crumbled under her feet. She changed tactics. Suddenly she was all about peace. She started sending these carefully worded emails about rebuilding trust, about reconciling differences outside of court. She even tried the old bait, offering to amicably split assets if we dropped everything quietly. It was pathetic. I didn't respond to a single one. I let her scramble. I let her panic. Because I knew the second we stepped into that courtroom, the lies were going to rip wide open and she would have nowhere left to hide. The morning of the hearing, Mark drove me downtown. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. Everything was already set. Evidence lined up like bullets in a magazine. Witnesses prepped, including Claire, who, in the end, picked survival over loyalty. Jessica showed up late. That alone told me everything I needed to know about where her head was rattled, scrambling, trying to hold together the last scraps of the life she'd torched. She wore another black dress, hair down this time, loose and soft like she thought it made her look vulnerable. Her lawyer, a new one, the old one had apparently quit, looked even more tired than she did. I didn't look at her. Not once. The courtroom was packed tighter than it should have been for a divorce hearing. Small town. Big scandal. People love watching blood spill when it isn't theirs. The first half moved fast. Asset division. Frozen accounts. House ownership. Jessica fought on every point, argued over every dollar like her life depended on it. It was ugly, childish, desperate. But when it came time for the real battle, the credibility war, that's when everything finally shattered. My lawyer stood up, methodical, ice-cold, and began laying out the evidence. One by one, piece by piece. The financial theft. The false accusations. The manipulation of evidence. The attempted framing. Claire was called to the stand. At first, she wavered. I could see the fear in her eyes, flicking toward Jessica like she expected her to leap across the room. But once she started talking, it all poured out. The fake emails. The staged text messages. The plans to provoke me into a public meltdown so Jessica could claim victimhood. The room went dead silent except for Claire's voice. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, hands steepled under his chin, absorbing every word. Jessica sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap, her face frozen in a mask of cold, brittle hatred. She knew it was over. When the thumb drive was played, the recordings of her and Claire laughing, scheming, planning, the whole courtroom heard it. Jessica's voice, clear as glass. I'll get everything. Watch. He's too stupid to fight back. And later, let's push him. Make him crack. Once he loses it, it's all mine. There was no saving her after that. Jessica's lawyer didn't even try. He just quietly asked for a recess, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage the tiniest shred of dignity from the wreckage. But it was done. The judge ordered immediate penalties. Jessica was stripped of any claim to the house, ordered to pay restitution for the drained accounts, sanctioned for attempted fraud on the court. And as for the false allegations, a criminal investigation was opened right there in front of everyone. I watched her as the words landed, her mouth tightening, eyes flickering wild around the room like she could still find some escape hatch. There wasn't one. Jessica, the woman who had spent months trying to destroy me with lies, was now facing real consequences for the first time in her life. And the best part? I didn't lift a finger to scream, to fight dirty, to break myself trying to match her madness. I just stood still, held the line, and let the truth burn everything down for me. As court adjourned, Jessica tried one last time. She brushed past the reporters gathering outside, made a beeline for me across the parking lot. "You're a monster," she hissed under her breath as she passed. "You ruined my life." I turned, calm, detached, and looked her dead in the eyes. "You ruined your own life," I said. "I just stopped pretending otherwise." She flinched like I'd hit her. And then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Another liar exposed to daylight for the first time. I got into Mark's truck without another word. We pulled away from the courthouse, leaving the ruins behind. Mark finally broke the silence, a low laugh under his breath. She really thought she could win. I leaned back in the seat, staring out at the road unspooling ahead of us. "She never understood," I said quietly. "I wasn't fighting for revenge." Mark glanced over. "What then?" "For freedom," I said. "For peace." And for the first time in years, I actually felt it. Not rage. Not grief. Not even triumph. Just silence. Real, clean, beautiful silence. Jessica was over. And I was finally free. It's strange what freedom feels like after you've lived without it for so long. It's not fireworks. It's not a parade. It's not even relief in the way you expect. It's silence. It's space. It's breathing without having to brace for the next blow. The weeks after the court hearing moved like slow, heavy rivers. The paperwork finalized. The accounts were separated. And Jessica's name slowly drained out of every corner of my life where it had once been carved in stone. She tried a few more times to claw her way back. Petty emails. Half-hearted threats. A drunken voicemail one night, sobbing about how we were supposed to be forever. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need to. Jessica wasn't my wife anymore. She wasn't even my enemy. She was just another ghost in the rearview mirror, fading smaller and smaller as I drove farther away from the wreck she made of herself. The town moved on faster than I thought it would. Scandal only holds their attention for so long before they sniff out the next blood trail. Jessica's charity collapsed within a month. The business partnerships disappeared even faster. Word got out about the court findings, and whatever fake sympathy she had built evaporated like it had never existed. The last I heard, she was working some miserable event planning gig 2 towns over, barely holding it together, living in a rental apartment half the size of the closet she used to brag about. Claire disappeared too, which suited me just fine. Ryan tried to reach out once, some pathetic excuse about being misled. But I left his message unanswered. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who stood by and watched you drown. I kept my circle small after that. Real small. Mark, my lawyer, who had become more of a brother than half the people who had claimed to love me. A few old friends who had stayed silent when everyone else picked a side and picked wrong. As for me, I rebuilt. Not in the cheesy, inspirational way you see in movies where the betrayed man finds new love and runs off into a sunset. Real rebuilding. Hard work. Long nights. Dragging myself up out of the emotional wreckage. One broken rib of a dream at a time. I bought a small house on the edge of town. Not big, not flashy. But it was mine. Every inch of it. I went back to hobbies I hadn't touched in years. Fishing. Working on old cars. Learning how to be alone without feeling empty. I started living for myself again. Not for appearances. Not for obligation. Not for someone else's fragile ego. And slowly, piece by piece, the man I used to be, the man Jessica spent years trying to smother into something smaller, more manageable, came back to life. But he didn't come back the same. Wiser. Harder. Sharper around the edges. I don't hate Jessica anymore. Not really. You don't hate a hurricane for ripping your house apart. You don't hate a wildfire for swallowing your home. You respect the destruction. You respect the damage it can do if you pretend it isn't coming. And then you build smarter next time. Stronger. Higher. Better. If there's anything I'd say to anyone standing where I once stood, it's this. When someone shows you the cracks early on, don't spackle over them with love and loyalty and dreams of what could be. Don't let loyalty to a history blind you to the reality of your present. And never ever let someone convince you that their betrayal is your fault. You're not crazy. You're not weak. And you're sure as hell not obligated to carry someone else's broken soul on your back until it breaks you too. Jessica taught me a lot. More than she ever intended. She taught me what a real lie looks like, not the words people say, but the way they live when they think no one's watching. She taught me that loving someone doesn't obligate you to die for them. And she taught me that sometimes the greatest mercy you can give a person who betrays you is letting them live in the ruins they built. Alone. Forever.